All right, good morning and welcome to Galaxy. Today being June the 24th. My name is Uche Onyekoluche, and of course you know Mondays is usually for topical issues. But before we go on to the topic, I have a colleague in the studio as well.
It's good to be here again, Uche. Good morning to you.
Good morning to you, Kelly. How you doing?
I'm okay. Of course, I'm Kelly Agiga. It's great to be back here this Monday morning. It was a very, very eventful weekend.
Yeah.
But for lovers of football in particular, I mean, I support the Super Falcons, and I support the black team as well at the FIFA Women's World Cup, and it was a very, very sad weekend for football lovers, especially people who believe that the blacks are always
an entity.
Well, kind of. I mean, I saw the game against the Super Falcons and Germany. Yesterday I saw the game between England and Cameroon, and it was really very terrible. I mean, it got to a point where the Cameroonians almost didn't want to continue playing.
You know, I'm sure you're wondering, are we looking at football this morning? Of course not, it's not football. We'll be looking at the topic, Buhari seeks to implement compulsory education. Do we support this? Do we not support this? We'll get to know as we're going to our outstations to relate with some of our guests on our outstations, as well as here in the studio where we'll have a Lagos guest. But remember, to be part of this program, all you need to do is send an SMS to the number that will be written on your screen. SMS and not call. Please send an SMS, make a comment, ask your questions, and we'll deal with them right here during the program. Also, do not forget, you can also reach out on our social media handles using hashtag Galaxy Today. So going straight to today's business, as we look at compulsory education, as Buhari puts it, vigorous education for students and for children between children who are within the ages of for primary school and of course GSS,
secondary school.
I think just junior schools.
Yeah.
Up to GSS 3, you owe it to your words. Be you a guardian, be you a parent, and you stand the risk of paying or bearing the consequence. I'm not the one taking it to we have a guest in the studio.
You stand the risk of going to jail.
Jail, or even paying some fine.
Being fined.
You know,
if you do not send your children or your words to school, at least to JSS 3. It's really sad because from a start that was released last year, I think in 2018 October, Nigeria actually has the highest number of out-of-school children. I think it's about 13.2 million or thereabouts. So it's really very sad for our country. We are supposed to be the giant of Africa, and it does appear that we are almost a shadow of itself. If we have the highest number of out-of-school children, a country with so much natural resources, there's almost no nation that is as blessed as this country, and yet we keep struggling and battling with issues such as education. So there's a lot to talk about, because
but if you also ask me, they say that charity begins at home. I mean, I'm not saying I'm supporting any parent or any guardian who has placed children at home, but if you also look at the budget is not even doing good. Looking at the last budget that was passed, they realized that the concentration for education is very little. I mean, there is no motivation for parents or guardians to want to send their children. Now, for some of us who think, aside of children, how about those children that stay with you? I mean, you're just a guardian. They're not your okay, maybe partly your responsibility, but these are children that you picked from home or you decided to put in the house. Are these ones also liable to go to school? Of course, yes. Okay, Kelly and I are not the professionals in this thing. We have a guest in the studio. Kelly, it was a pleasure. Introduce our guest, please.
Of course, we have a programs officer right here, Johnson Ibidakwe. It's good to have you with us. Many thanks for joining us.
Thank you. Good morning.
Good morning.
Yeah.
Okay, I saw when we were talking, you were just nodding your head in dissatisfaction, and some you were like, okay, good. You know, it feels like it's something that's been itching you, feeling like, how can children, this is supposed to be our future, how can they just be lying low at home? The fear of what is going to become of Nigeria. But before that, let's talk about what the president has said. PNB has said it must be a vigorous, he used the word vigorous. Yeah. Now, do you think is a good approach
Yeah, I would say that desperate measures are needed for desperate situations. I think our situation is now very desperate.
Okay.
Looking at the number of out-of-school children, he just quoted what the UBEC chairman said in October last year, of about 13.2 million children. In fact, we are still counting. Because, in about 2010 or thereabouts, it was just about 10.5 million. All of these figures are also estimates, because we have a problem with data in Nigeria generally.
Yeah, absolutely.
So this 13.5 million is just an estimated figure.
It could be more
of this. The problem was escalated in 2010, particularly with the issue of insurgency in the northeastern part of Nigeria. So it's a very big problem we have on our hands. So for the president to have used that particular word, vigorous, I think it calls for the word. Even if there was a stronger word, like that is even more strong, that is stronger than vigorous, I would support him using that particular word.
Well, because people have actually seen Mr. President as being dictatorial in nature. They sometimes feel that his body language his body language actually calls for some concern, because this is a democratic system of government and all of that. So there are fears. I mean, I'm sure some parents might be wondering, what exactly might the president be planning? I mean, it's a former general, and you've seen the body language. So there are calls for concern.
Well, even if there are calls for concerns, I'll still say that this is a democracy, and that even though the term vigorous was used, it should still be done in line with what the law has said. There is a UBA Act of 2004, you have a National Education Policy. Whatsoever is going to be vigorous is going to be based on these documents, which are the working documents guiding the implementation and delivery of quality basic education in Nigeria. So there shouldn't be fears, particularly if the parents are not defaulting. Because we know there are defaulting parents, and HDI as an organization has been campaigning for this over the years, that you shouldn't just be concerned about the well-being of yourself. You should be concerned about our children. Yeah. And then even if you are no longer a parent, for example, you have parents whose children have grown up, they are now grown-ups, they are now grandparents, but you see some of them who are they are harboring others' children. I mean, others' children, like some of them use them for house help and all of that, assistance and all of that. So, but basically the thing here is, you should enroll every child of school age in school. So if you are a defaulter, there are stipulations of this UBA Act that says that you can be jailed or fined, with an option of fine, or if the judge wakes up from the wrong part of the bed, he can give you both. So these are some of the things. So those who are defaulting have something to worry about. Those who are already compliant have nothing to worry about.
We'll also explore the options. If the child decides, he wakes up one morning and says, I don't want to go to school, I probably want to be a businessman and all of that.
At what age?
We'll probably talk about that. We actually have a report that concerns the NSC, the National Security Advisor, Muhammadu, as well as the Inspector General of Police. Let's go take that report and then we'll come back and talk more. Join us again.
The federal government has resolved to abolish the Almajiri phenomenon as a way of curbing the rising insecurity of the country. National Security Advisor Babagana Mugunu made the disclosure after the 95th meeting of the Economic Council in Abuja on Thursday. Mugunu said such group as the Almajiri is responsible for many of the social vices currently being witnessed in the country. He said the federal government will collaborate with state government to ensure full implementation of compulsory education for Nigerian children as part of plans to eliminate extremism within the country.
Because we cannot continue to have urchins, streets, children roaming around only for them in a couple of years or decades to become a problem to society. We are not saying that they're going to be contained in a manner that, I'm sure you think maybe we might want to do something that is harmful to them. No, what we want to do is to work with the state governments to enforce the policy of education for every child.
Also speaking, the Inspector General of Police, who briefed the Council on ways to contain insecurity in the country, said the force has commenced installation of CCTV with the Federal Capital Territory to monitor activities of criminals. He said the Council also set up the Security and Policing Committee to combat insecurity in the country as part of Safe City initiative of the force.
taming the security situation was as a result of some of the strategies in terms of liaising and cooperating with members of the public. It was as a result of human intelligence that we got from the members of the public that made us achieve the feat in stabilizing the security situation in the country. And this was this came under the strategic operation that we came up with, which is called Operation Pop-Ada.
The council also preferred solutions that centered on education, unemployment reduction, and poverty reduction.
Welcome back, it's the Galaxy today, and we've seen that. Okay, before we go into what we want to ask you, I'd like you to react to that. I mean, he did say something important about the education, and this is something you've been echoing. I remember the last time I had you here, you were saying some things, and while we were on that report, you did say something about the Federal Capital Territory having about 12% of out-of-school children.
Yeah, it's a problem we have on our hands, and so I think one major issue why we have this gap is the body language of the government of the day to actually implement the policies. Nigeria has fantastic policies, be it education, health, but the problem is always implementation.
But if you say that children must, because it was a charge he gave state governors, so you expected that every child should be in school, not private schools, but school owned by the government. And we all know what the school facilities are now like this. So what, if children are sent to the classroom, what are they going to do? What are they going to learn with? Are we not first supposed to look at the structure of our education, the syllabuses and the rest, before addressing children going to school?
No, I think all of this can be done at the same time, simultaneously, because things are not really as bad as many of us think they are. At least, you know, we walk around the country, and in Nigeria, for instance, we walk in the southeast, in the northeast, and all of that. No, the northeast is the only area we don't work. We work in the northwest, north central, and southwest here too. And you can see that as far as basic education is concerned, the government has made a provision that to finance basic education, there is a counterpart funding matching grant arrangement between the federal government and state governments, where the federal government contributes about 50% of the funds, while the state also brings about 50%. And these funds are used basically to finance construction projects, rehabilitation projects, fencing projects, and furniture. So yes, we know that things are not as they should be, but basically some things have been done also. So we have classrooms in many places that are not being occupied by students and by pupils. You know, we are not saying that we now have all we want to have or all we should have, but basically we have some facilities that are not being used. So while talking and campaigning for and championing the cause of you know, better policies, implementation in terms of teacher training and all of that, we should also be talking about school enrollment. I mean, if teachers are there in the classrooms and there are no students and pupils to teach, then it's still the same issue we're talking about. So I think they can be done simultaneously.
Okay, let's talk about Nigerians generally as we talk about campaigning for some of the these changes or the implementation of some of these changes. To China, where in Hong Kong we had over 2 million people, Chinese, on the streets protesting against a particular extradition bill, and then we also have a situation in Sudan where we had the Sudanese for over weeks now protesting because they are demanding some changes. As we look at the implementation or the enforcement of some of these policies, are you also concerned about the kind of people we are as a nation?
Well, I think Nigerians are fantastic people. You know, there is absolutely no nation in the world that can be going through this many problems, and there won't be, the place wouldn't have burnt. I mean, Nigeria is a special country. That's my final conclusion. You know, yes, we should be concerned about the effects and consequences of some of these policies, but the question is, are these policies working in other places? Yes, they are. How were they implemented? We should go to such countries and study them and then look at how we can actually make these things to work in Nigeria as well. So basically, I don't see any backlash on the vigorous implementation of the UBA Act happening in Nigeria, because it is for the overall good of the country, and every well-meaning Nigeria must buy into this vision of the government.
Okay.
Okay.
I like what you just said. But I'd like us to go back to what the Act says about if the children, I'm talking about the Act.
The UBA Act.
The UBA Act, exactly. I'd like to quickly see if we can read out something here.
We can't put it up on the screen. Let's see if we can have that on the screen now. So we'll just
okay, please.
get
Let's
to
see if we can have
refer to it.
the Act on the screen, because right here it says. Under a resolute enforcement of free and compulsory education in the country would mean parents failing to enroll their children in school up to junior secondary school would be arrested and prosecuted as provided by law. And under the Compulsory Free Universal Basic Education Act of 2004, it is criminal for parents to fail to send their children to a minimum of JSS 3. It's that Section 2 of the law says every parent shall ensure that his child on board attends and complete his primary school education and junior secondary school education by endeavoring to send the child to primary and junior secondary school education. Okay, so before we went to that break, Kelly did say that what if a child tells you, I don't want to go to school?
You see, we are a democracy. As much as we sign on to and agree with the Child Rights Act, the Constitution supersedes every other act. Under the Nigerian Constitution, you are a child as long as you are under 18. The education policy says that as long as you are between the ages of 3 to 5, you should be in the early childhood care development education centers. From 6 to 11, you should be in a primary school. And from 12 to 14, you should be in the junior secondary school. That is what the law says. So no child can decide to say, as long as I am not interested, I cannot go to school. You can't say that. And then, as a child, you are still under your parents. The parents get to take decisions, and that is why the law is holding the parents to account, not the child. A child can decide and say, look, I'm not eating today. That is not healthy for the child. So even if a child falls sick and they need to take a drug, the parents must persuade the child to take a drug.
In situations where, for instance, the words or maybe relative or helps it's probably brought from the village to the city, and then you probably have to start such education late and all of that. Probably a person is already in his teenage years or somewhere around 18 or probably above 18, and he says, okay, I don't just want to go to school, I want to do business. I want to do something extra.
Yeah, in that case, you should persuade such persons to actually go to school, because basic education prepares people, everyone, in a very important way. You know, it equips you with basic literacy, communicative, life skills, even arithmetics, basic arithmetics. So it helps every form of business. So such children who are probably, or such persons who are above 18 should be persuaded. But as long as they are under 18, they are bound by the law to at least attain or get basic education from primary 1 to GSS 3.
I like us to question the government here. From what I heard or seen here, let me read out this lengthy one. It said, despite the high numbers, some state governments have yet to take advantage of billions of naira in counterpart funding provided by the federal government for free basic education. In March, Mr. Adamu said parents were frustrating the government's efforts to reverse the shocking figures. Speaking on matching grants and other intervention funds for basic education in Nigeria, the minister said 350 billion naira had been expended on the subsector by the Buhari administration in 4 years, while the preceding government spent 360 billion in 6 years. And he said in the 6 years preceding the Buhari administration, between 2009 and 2014, the federal government spent about 360 billion naira worth of intervention on basic education, covering textbooks, teacher professional development, construction of classrooms and libraries, resources, amongst others. Okay, so we hear these whooping figures and what they're meant to be used for. I did know that during the Baba Tunde Raji Fashola's regime, there were some schools that were built. I don't know if that's from the state or from the federal government. But we still know that some schools are lacking serious facilities, even classrooms. You see, some classrooms are not even good enough for learning. There are no doors, there are no windows. It is not conducive in any way. And I'm wondering if federal government is saying that they've spent 360 billion naira.
Yeah.
Where did it go to? Why are we not seeing the reflection in our education?
All right.
Why would parents be frustrated in sending their children to such schools? If my child cannot attend that school because there's no reason to learn, that's it back at all.
Yeah, that's
so
true.
who are we to blame if they've expended, we're talking about 360 billion naira and it's not reflected?
All right. I think there is an explanation to that.
Okay.
Talking about 350 billion naira, the expenses were made to the 36 states of the federation.
That is previously to the Buhari's administration.
Yes.
And during the 4 years of Buhari's administration, and that 350 billion.
Yeah. Yeah. So, like I said, there is a counterpart funding matching grant arrangement between the federal government and the state governments.
Okay.
So every year, the way it works is this: the state government comes with half the money. Mm-hmm. Let's say the money is 3 billion naira. The state government comes with about 1.5 billion, while the federal government matches the same amount. And so you have 3 billion for basic education devoted to basic education for that fiscal year. Mm-hmm. And so, like I said, the funds can be used for 4 kinds of projects, which are apart from these textbooks and all of the other stuff. It can be for construction of new buildings. You can rehabilitate buildings that are already dilapidated. You can get furniture, and you can construct fences for schools. Now, every year, these funds just are left there at the Central Bank of Nigeria, although we learned that the accounts have now changed, for states to access. So when you come as a state, let's say this is Lagos State, the Lagos State government says, oh, we want to access our funds for year 2018. The provision says, first, you must bring your 50%, that's 1.5 billion. Mm-hmm. Number 2, you must also have utilized the funds for the former year, the previous year, that's 2017. Mm-hmm. And the projects you are executing should have at least reached about 70-75% completion. Number 3, you must submit your action plans, which details the kinds of projects you want to execute, what you want to do with the money, the number of projects, the amount you are going to spend on each project, the duration of the project. That action plan must be submitted. So these are some of the provisions. And so it's been difficult for some states over the years to access this money, except for, I think, late last year, the government came up with a new strategy.
Is that a regulatory body seeing to this? Because if we have a regulatory body who goes about supervising, I remember when we were quite young, we have these people come around assessing, and and you see where some of our state governments are failing.
I think we see how some of those bodies.
UBEC is the one responsible for actually.
I think we see how some of those bodies. But then again, we have situations where before some of those bodies get to go to those schools, they announce they are coming. You understand?
Then they put the school in
and then everyone, of course, I mean, we are Nigerians,
Definitely.
we're really very smart. So they get to put everything, and then you come and use. And sometimes even when you also go, the school would have also prepared some gifts items for you as well. You leave with some materials and all of that. And then your mouth
this is where the civil society comes in. This is where the civil society comes in as a third force that can actually help to put things in order and bring some checks and balances. For instance, let me give you an instance of what we do in human development initiatives.
Okay.
Generally, the projects that we mentioned, whether construction, fencing, furniture, rehabilitation, are supervised the contracts are awarded by SUBEB, the State Universal Basic Education Board.
Okay.
Implemented by contractors that SUBEB actually award the contracts to. Mm-hmm. SUBEB also has a monitoring body that goes around to monitor the implementation of this project and the execution. Okay. Now, we as a civil society organization with our funders who support us approach SUBEB and say, look, we know you are doing a fantastic job, but give us the right hand of fellowship and let us also join you to monitor. SUBEB allowed that. So we are doing this in about 4 or 5 states now. So what we do is we go to the local communities, talk to the local stakeholders there. You are a parent, you are a community leader, you are a youth member, you are a market woman, or what have you. So we train these people, we equip them with the action plan. We simplify it to make it very clear. These are the projects in this community. So we give to these stakeholders and allow them to track and then give us feedbacks, as well as give feedbacks to the local government education authority, which is the body that regulates and controls basic education at the local level. They also give us feedbacks while we feed SUBEB back, and then we also feed UBEC back. So doing this, we've been able to see a lot of things, make a lot of corrections. There were situations where a contractor was trying to do a shoddy job, you know, the blocks. By the time the monitors got there and they saw the blocks, they said, this cannot be used for this building. He thought it was a joke until some of the monitors went to the site and damaged many of the blocks. Then he knew they were not there for joke. So the civil society needs to come in to also help as a third hand to help balance things up.
All right, let's just join one of our outstations. We're looking at Buhari seeks to implement compulsory education, and we have a guest at Ibadan standing by in person of Dr. Deji Omoli, Chairman ASU, University of Ibadan. Good morning, and good to have you on the show. We're looking at the compulsory education implementation the presidency is trying to carry out. He used the word vigorous, and some people felt it was rather harsh. Some people felt like we're not ready for this. That why would you want to do a compulsory education when we're not sure our facilities are working? But from your own opinion, let's look at Ibadan as a case study. Would you say that compulsory education will thrive in your city?
When you are talking of compulsory education, you have to interrogate what have been put in place for the program to take off. Most of the statements made by government are just political statements. If you could recollect, 2 years ago, the minister said they were going to declare state of emergency in the education sector. That same year, the budget on education went down to about 7.9% from about 9%. This year budget is about 6.7%. So when you are talking of compulsory education, it's not a mere political statement. It has to be adequately planned. What are the ingredients? How can you have compulsory education without adequate funding? So, as far as we are concerned, it's just one of the political statements by government. And I'm sure they are not ready to drive it through. There is no commitment. It's just that, talk is cheap. Political office holders can just make statement and the media will begin to carry it. In another 6 months, they will make another statement and will begin to trend it. So we should not expect something tangible from that statement because it has to be adequately planned for. Let them tell us their plan to execute that particular project. Then we will know whether they are serious or not.
Well, Dr. Momola, it's good to see you again. I know that you're very involved with some of your demands of ASU and all of that. But let's get to hear your first-hand experience as regards the education sector. You have been in the system for quite some time now. Tell us your experience.
I've been in the system for quite some time. Nigeria is a place today where our past is better than present. And that is a signal to what the future portends for this country. Gradually, public-funded education is being decimated by successful governments because they assume education is a commodity that can only be procured by the highest bidder. They have not really seen education as a tool for national development. For as long as the government attitude remains so, the future of this country is bleak because the future of education is bleak. So there has been no serious departure from what it used to be in terms of educational development in Nigeria. And we have been saying it, no nation can ever grow beyond the quality of education given to the citizen. So, my brothers and sisters, we have a lot of work to do. We have to ask this government to save public education. We have been saying it. It is not the children of the rich that will develop this country. It is children of the masses, and they are being neglected. That is why you are having crises all over the places. No properly trained child will revolt against the parents. You are seeing this kind of revolution in terms of what do you call militancy and all sorts of things, because government has failed to give the citizen the required education. So that is the problem. And for as long as the position of government remains so, the future is better imagined than experienced. Remains so.
I just want you to, you did say there's a whole lot of work to do. What would you suggest to the federal government at this point?
We have said it several times. Government should make conscious effort to see education as investment. If you don't invest, you cannot reap. Education is not a commodity. It is a tool for national development. And if you want to ask, if you ask this government, what is their developmental plan? In the next 5 years, what are they expecting Nigerians to focus on? Where do they expect us to be? All this must be put on desk so that the people in the ivory tower can sit down together and synergize and be able to channel all energies in this direction of national development. But what do we see? Government will always pay lip service towards funding education, and recently we had it in a particular speech presented on behalf of government by the permanent secretary that they have released 208 billion to the university. That is a lie. That money is a statutory allocation from TET fund, annual release by TET fund. Is not part of what we've been asking government to do. Government must consciously eject money. You have to. What we have now is we have to declare a state of emergency, not the type the former Minister of Education said they wanted to declare. And at the end of the day, nothing happened. What happened was they only reduced the budget. So we have a lot of work to do. And Nigerians are patriotic. If they see the body language of government, that government meant business, everybody will follow suit. But when we continue to pay lip service towards development, go to the various embassies, you see a lot of people trooping out of this country. We are losing our best brain. And why is it that whenever they go out, they excel, they perform? It's because we don't have the facility to work here. So that is the problem. Government must be the leader, and I'm sure Nigerians are patriotic. They will follow suit.
G. Omale from Oyo State, precisely from University of Ibadan. He's the chairman. So thank you once again for being part of the show. Okay, so that is all we can take from Ibadan. We'll be back to Lagos before we join our outstation in Abuja. You did hear what he said. I'd like you to make one or two comments. Just react to what he said.
Yes, he's saying the truth. It's much more than just making statements. I would want to see a government that would establish, a special task force, national task force, and then the state governments and governors should follow suit by establishing state task force that will see to the implementation of this policy. Aside funding education, we have been talking about funding all year long. But basically, talking about enrollment and retention, it's something that every stakeholder needs to collaborate to ensure this is done. So let's see the federal government setting up a task force. Let the police work with all other security agencies so that working with the ministry, the relevant ministries and parastatals of government, let them be able to make arrests, make examples of parents who have failed to enroll their children in school, and then make conscious effort also to do direct intervention to help to better the lots of the Nigerian children, particularly in places where there are infrastructural gaps. I think this will really help us.
Also, let me say this. Dr. Mone also mentioned the fact that it does appear that, well, the children of the masses rather would probably develop this country, Nigeria.
That's true.
And very recently in Mr. President's inaugural speech, he said he was going to raise over 100 million Nigerians out of poverty. And then we've also been tagged the poorest black nation on the surface of the earth.
We have not just been tagged, we are.
Okay, well, do you think that the average parent has what it takes to educate or to sponsor the education of their parents? Do we have parents who probably want to even send their children to school but cannot afford it? And then they are going to probably, if this is implemented, they are going to be sent to jail for a month, and then again they will be away from their children for 1 month probably.
I will take that question from two perspectives.
Okay.
Number one is that according to the UBE Act, and as at today, according to the Constitution, basic education is free.
To JSS 3.
It's free.
To JSS 3.
Yes, from primary 1 to JSS 3, it's free.
Is it totally
However,
free? Is it totally free?
That's the second perspective.
Yeah, because it's free, and then the children will go to school. They say pay for this. Of course, you have to pay you have to get your uniforms, your stockings, and sandals, and all of that.
There are two ways to answering that. The first is that there are corrupt school officials.
Oh, sure.
And then we need sanctions. The UBE Act 2004 provides sanctions for corrupt school officials. For instance, if you are a school official and you are found to be charging, for basic education, you could go to jail for 1 month, or you are fined 10,000 naira, or both. But this I've never seen any state government implement it. That's a side. Now, talking about implementation of this, and parents actually, in actual fact, what we have on ground now, to be factual and to be sincere with you, is free tuition. It's not free education.
Okay.
Because if you want to talk about this thing, in actual fact, how free is free education? You are talking of uniforms, you are talking of school standards.
Please, you need to hold your thoughts there. We're having our outstation in Abuja is ready for us, where we have Okechukwu Ezema, an education consultant. Good morning, Okechukwu. It's good to have you on Galaxy today. And of course, we're looking at the implementation of compulsory education by the President, Muhammadu Buhari. First of all, as an education consultant, do you think it is fair, or rather, would you say it is a wise decision for him to use the word vigorous, that every child and word must attend primary up until GSS 3? Failure, if a parent refuses to do that, that person, of course, has a whole lot to face. You have a fine to pay, or you go to the prison, or you might actually serve the two. What's your opinion? What's your take on all this?
Chair, if I got your question well, you said you are talking about the compulsory basic education. Well, yes, the government has done well. The president has done well for trying to enforce the compulsory education. But actually, the plan has to be in place, as the doctor from Ibadan rightly said. Currently, we have 7.05% of the budget allocated to education, and that is quite low compared to the recommended 15 to 20% by UNESCO. And Nigeria has the highest number of out-of-school children right now. We have 13.2 million children out of school, and that is not a situation that we are going to actually be sleeping over. In the north, we have 69% of the children out of school. That is, out of this 13.2 million, the 69% of it are from the north. Then Abuja has 13% out of this 13.2 million. Now, that should give us a concern, a serious concern. So, as a nation, we must not just be singing it, we have to really plan it in order to execute this, what the president has just said during the NEC. But surprisingly, they have begun to fail already because the budget is quite low. So, and if the budget is low, and of course you know implementation of budget in Nigeria, what it takes, before it gets down to the grassroots, you discover that it might be up to 2% that will be implemented. So, the problem as it is may likely persist because of this shortage in budgetary allocation. So, but as be that as it may, then the government has, of course, told us that they are interested in revamping the educational sector. Well, let us see how it goes. But we have to really start from the beginning. So, children they don't take care of themselves. It is the parents and the adults that take care of the children. So the law that has been in place for this basic education, ensure basic education, is a commendable one. But all the hands of stakeholders must be in place in order to enforce it. So it's not just the government alone. The parents must ensure that they do all they can to take their children to school.
Mr. Okechukwu, I'm really very concerned about the political class, the elite. I'm wondering how educated they are. For instance, we have even Mr. President, well, just prior to the elections, he was actually a subject of scrutiny where his YA certificate was a subject of debate. So how educated would you say the political class are? First of all, because is it a case of do as I say and don't do what I do? That's on the one side. But then again, when we also get to consider some other very, very interesting issues. I read a book very recently, a book by Chinua Achebe. There was a country where he mentioned something about informal education. Is there a way we can marry formal education and informal education? Because when you speak to some of the people who went through informal education, it does appear they are probably wiser than this particular generation. What are your thoughts exactly?
I would not say that the political class are not educated. The political class are educated. But I can say that the lapses there is in the moral education. Now, I say moral education because we really have to set our values straight or upgrade our value system as a country. Now, you have many of them there that have up to 3 master's degree, 2 master's degree, but to our greatest shock, you see these people fighting in the National Assembly, you know, with their seats and all that. Then what do you expect the children to do? And what do you expect those that are being led to do? So I want to believe that it's not that they don't have certificate, they have not gone to school, they have all gone to school, but we have a lot to do in bringing up even our children as it is right now, because we have a lot, our value system as a country, what we believe, what we uphold to be the highest values as a country is they are very low. So people believe that once they get there, they just have to do all they can to enrich themselves and all that. But that shouldn't be the case. we should think of how to develop our country. People should only think of how they should make meaningful contributions to the society, because at the end of the day, you are not going to take anything. You are not going to take anything home in terms of if somebody dies, for instance, you are not going to bury the person's aircraft with the person. So what the person will be remembered for is going to be the lives the person has been able to touch. And we of course we have that. We have a lot of Nigerians that have made meaningful contributions. We have those that have fought for the Nigerian independence and all that. All the money they accumulated, they are nowhere, but we still have their names written on gold. So we really need to get back to the roots. So moral value system is what we need to upgrade as a country in from our educational sector. So they are educated. Many of them have high degrees in terms of they are doctors, they have gone to overseas, they have gone to that, but that is not solving our problem as a country. So what do we uphold as the most important things to be done? Now, touching the lives of people in terms of raising the standard of living of the general masses has to be in our front as a nation. So it's not just about you. If you,
Mr. Okechukwu, a quick one, because we are really pressed for time. As we consider the Free Universal Basic Education Act 2004, when you consider the economy of our country, we just were out of recession a few months ago, well, maybe a year now plus. Do you think that the Nigerian government, the Nigerian economy can sustain free education, totally, absolutely free, especially what we heard and read about the Awolowos and all of that?
That is what that was where I started from. It has to start from the budgetary allocation, sir. If you don't make enough budgetary, set aside enough fund to maintain free education, it cannot work. So, and again, not just to set the budget, but another thing is to ensure that the budget is fully implemented, at least up to 70%.
An education consultant, also very big thanks to you for being part of this show. That is as much as we can take from Ibadan. Thank you once again. All right, you did hear what he said about sustainability, but I'd like to also add this. If we're talking education for our children, I mean, it takes someone who understands the importance of education to want to encourage education. Growing up those years, I thought there was something about adult education. So if they're doing this allocation for children, are there plans for adults, for parents, and for other people who are interested?
The UBA Act also covers adult education, education for special population, let's say the nomadic children, adult education years, then socially excluded groups. All of these are covered in the UBA Act. But like we said, the problem is always implementation. You know, we have to really show a commitment to really getting these things done actually on ground. And I had the question he asked about the school curriculum. I think it's very important that we do a complete overhaul of our curriculum, education curriculum. It's one of the major problems we have. Thank God, I think the current administration has returned history to schools now, and it's one of our problems. You know, when you forget your history, a lot of things get lost. You know, so and it's very, very critical that we should know that at this point in Nigeria, we need our children not just to know their roots, their history. We need them to also be taught morality. In those days, when a trader wants to sell and she places her ware by the roadside, she doesn't have to be there. So there was something that was guarding the consciousness of Nigerians at those ages when you can just put your wares by the roadside. Somebody wants to buy, we'll put the money there and go. Then the method of teaching also needs to be adapted to suit our particular needs in this country. Exactly. I had a story, for instance, whether it's a joke or something, I don't know. That Baba Chukwudi visited the school of his son. And then the teacher wanted to demonstrate that Chukwudi was a dullard who knew nothing about arithmetic and said, Chukwudi, 1,000 minus 650, what does it give you? And Chukwudi had to be scratching his head and said, now look at your son, he's a dullard. And Baba Chukwudi said, no, you are a bad teacher. He said, Chukwudi, a customer came. Baba Chukwudi was now asking his son a question. And then he gave you 1,000 and he bought a good of 650 naira. Now how much change you go collect? You could say that one not hard now 350 naira. And so he said, you see now. So the method of teaching is also very critical. If as children, if it's possible, we should make sure we educate our children, our students in their local languages. So that there can be, assimilation and understanding. So we need to fashion our curriculum to suit our particular needs in this country. Let's stop talking about the curriculum of those days that has not changed anything.
Especially our literature.
Yes.
I know most of our literature are filled with the Shakespearean books and the rest. And I wonder why we're not telling our own Eze goes to school.
Yeah. You have the Chimamandas of this world, you have the Chino Achibes of this world, and then people are talking about Shakespeare. These are issues that are foundational to the weakness of our education system.
Okay, so being that you run an initiative that handles all this, how would you rather suggest to the federal government? People say the older you get, the older your mind. Now, we are of this generation, we understand the hunger. The syllabuses has to introduce a whole lot, digitalization, social media, and the rest. I mean, back in our own school, there was not really nothing like computers growing up then. Now, such things has to be introduced in our curriculum. How would you rather suggest that this government to have effective, not just going to school, but having effective minds? Because when you're properly educated, then we can move the society forward. How would you suggest to the federal government to handle the educational sector for this country, starting with the budget?
Well, first, it starts with the budget. We need to shore up the allocation to the education sector. No nation makes progress with 6% allocation to the education sector. No nation. So the recommendation is between 15 to 20%, and we are far, far below that. So we need to shore up that. Now, coming to the education sector itself, we need to sit down at the round table again. Really, I think the last time this was done, I think we made some progress. I mean, the universal primary education that operated in the 70s was upgraded to what we now call universal basic education, which the Obasanjo administration started in 1999, and then it was passed into law, backed up by law in 2004. We need to sit down again and deliberate on what kind of education we want in this country. I'm telling you, it's very, very important. Instead of just allowing what has been on ground to be as it was in the beginning, so it is now, never more shall be. That is not the way to go if we want to make progress as far as our education is concerned. Fund it, plan for it, let's have an action plan. What do you want to do and how are you going to get it done? Not just making political statements that will not see the light of the day. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I wish we can continue, but time is not on our side. Thank you so much for gracing our platform. Once a big thanks to all our guests here in Lagos. We had them Justin Ibidakbo, the Programs Officer for Human Development Initiative, and from Abuja we had them Okechukwu Ezema, an education consultant, and of course from Ibadan it was Dr. Deji Omoli, Chairman ASO University of Ibadan. And to you who start back to enjoy the show, thank you. We'll be back at 10 tomorrow. Make it a date with us. I am Uche Onyekoje. Have a wonderful Monday.
I am Kelly Egiga. Have a productive week. God bless you.